Hey yo, yes, you can do the embroidery embossing hack on your 4x4 embroidery machine. Don't let anyone tell you any different. You definitely can. Today, we're going to do two projects where I will show you how you can do the hack easily on your 4x4 machine. Well, one of them is easily enough. The other one, got to do a little bit of work, but the end results are gorgeous. As you see, this was done with my 4x4 embroidery machine. Ooh, shimmy. And then we also did this project. Super cute. It's a onesie, and this is embossed as well. And guess what? This design and this design is available to you for free. I made these designs especially for the 4x4 embroidery machine. So if you have the 4x4 machine, click the link in the description below, go fill out the form, get the link to the Google Drive where you can download the file. If you have a 4x4 machine, you have a folder that says 4x4, which is just for you. Then if you have a larger machine, there's another file that says the larger version of the file. But this video is for the 4x4 users especially. So welcome, come on in, sit down, grab your file, and follow along. Definitely follow along with this video if you've never done the embossing hack before, okay? You ready? All right, let's dive right in.
Doing the embossed embroidery hack can be done with the 4x4 embroidery machine. You have two different options to accomplish this. The two options that you have, I'm going to show you here on the cutting table, do a quick explanation of one of the options, and then show you everything that you need in order to get started. Doing this hack, you have two options, as I stated before. The first option is to use a 4x4 embroidery design that is embossed. All right, and you guys have the link in the description for a free design that you can use with the 4x4 embroidery machine. We also have this as an option as well. This is a repositional hoop, and you also have a link in the description for a design that is already formatted to use with this hoop. But for those of you unfamiliar with the repositional hoop, I'm going to go into it kind of briefly to explain this to those who may not know. Now, if you're not familiar with the repositional hoop, I do have a link that you can click in the description below that will explain more in detail how to use the repositional hoop. And we will cover it a little bit toward the end of the video. But for now, I just want to briefly point out a couple of things you need to know before using this. Okay, so your embroidery machine is limited to a 4x4 square. That's all you can do with this machine. Where there's a workaround, this is kind of another hack, so to speak. This is an aftermarket hoop, and it's called a repositional hoop. So repositional means that this hoop, although it's limited to 4 inches by, say, 6.7 inches wide, but this allows you to embroider bigger than 4x4. Okay, so this hoop is essentially going to be split up into 4x4 chunks, and that's how this hoop works. So if you have a design that you want to do that's bigger than 4 inches one way or the other, then you can break that design up in your embroidery software program. We will be using Sew It Pro. And once you break that embroidery design up, then you can use this hoop to use it in the 3 different positions in order to accomplish embroidering your design. So say for instance, you wanted to do a rose, something like that. And the rose is smaller than 4 inches wide, but it's longer than 4 inches. Well, you can take that rose and you can embroider it with this hoop. Or say, for instance, you want to do a full name, or just like the design that you guys are getting with this project, it's wide. It has the word loved. And so it's longer than 4 inches. Well, this hoop will allow you to stitch one section here. Then we move the hoop, stitch the second section, and then we'll move the hoop again to stitch the third section. That's a repositional hoop because you keep repositioning this hoop in order to stitch on this wider section. Okay, but keep in mind, whenever you're using this, you're still limited. You can go roughly 7 inches wide, but you still can't go over 4 inches tall. Or if you use it this way with an embroidery design, a tall embroidery design, like I mentioned with the rose can't be over 4 inches wide, but it can be up to 6.7 inches tall. Okay, so that's a repositional hoop. Also, I got this off of Amazon. Amazon has plenty of them, but you also want to be careful because this hoop is not the same as this hoop. Okay, so what hoop is this? Well, this is a 5x7 embroidery hoop that goes with the 5x7 embroidery machine. But I want you to see the difference in the bracket on the side. Okay, so if you notice here, there are channels on the side of this where this hoop clamps into the 5x7 embroidery machine. Whereas with the 4x4 embroidery machines, and this is for all of the small 4x4 embroidery machines, you'll notice that the side of these brackets, notice these are knobs that are sticking out. So that's how this hoop actually clamps into the arm bracket for this embroidery machine. Because the 5x7 embroidery machine does come with a repositional, or it doesn't come with one, but you can order a repositional hoop as well for the 5x7 machine. You can mess up and purchase the wrong repositional hoop if you're not careful. Okay, so make sure your model number shows up in the description, and just to be sure, see if you can see what the side of it looks like. Make sure there's not any channel indentations on the side, because that's not going to work with this 4x4 embroidery machine. This is the hoop that you want to get to work with the 4x4 embroidery machine. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we are going to get started with the easiest project first, and that's the 4x4 embroidery design that you guys have access to. And the 4x4 embroidery design is going to be one step. You don't have to reposition anything. Everything fits in the 4x4 square. Now, the project that with the 4x4, we're going to put it on a onesie. Okay, and now the other project that we're going to use the repositional hoop with, that's going on an adult t-shirt. And with both of these projects, the embossed look, to achieve that look, you want to use the same color thread as the shirt that it's going on, or the item that it's going on. So I already have the teal thread for the teal onesie already up here on this embroidery machine, and then I have the red thread sitting off to the side for this when we get to that project. And you also want to get a contrasting thread, because the design that I offered you guys has some writing for both of them. So I'm going to use black for the extra writing on this and the extra writing on that, but I'm not going to use this for the embossed part. Some other things that you will need for both projects, despite what the colors are, is you will need your craft foam. Okay, so the foam that I'm using is embroidery craft foam. It's 3mm thick. You can get this off of Amazon. The link is in the description below, where you can purchase this. Or if you're not a fan of Amazon, I also have a link to my Designs and Machine embroidery supplier, where I get all of my embroidery supplies from, where you can get thread, you can get stabilizers, you can get anything you need to take care of your embroidery project. You also, in addition to the foam, you could get some 505 adhesive spray. This is temporary adhesive, and it needs to be the 505 because this is friendly to your embroidery needle, and it won't gum up your embroidery needle. Some of these temporary adhesive sprays will gum up your needle, and then you'll go to try and finish your project and you're getting issues with your embroidery thread getting jammed up, or a bird's nest and all that other stuff. It's probably because you gummed up your machine with a lot of adhesive. I don't care to use this on a regular basis, but if you feel like you need to, then it needs to be the 505 spray. You also want to keep you some scissors on standby, just in case the foam doesn't perforate as easily as we would like for it to. You'll also need a ruler so that you can use this to help mark where you're going to put the embroidery design on your onesie or your t-shirt or whatever you're embroidering on. In addition to the ruler to help you mark where your placement is going to be, you can use any form of a temporary marking option. So this is chalk. So it's a chalk roller that will roll out a line of chalk. And then this is a magic air erase marker. So you can use this to mark on the fabric and air. Just let it dry, and it over time it'll disappear. But I like to speed it up by spraying it with some water. So a little spritz, not a whole lot, will help this disappear as well. You also have options out there like heat erase and all those, or you can mark it with pins as long as you pin it completely out of the way. So if I'm not mistaken, and cutaway stabilizer, actually, we do need to mention you will be using cutaway stabilizer with this project. I've used tearaway with it and it does not work because when you're trying to tear away the foam, it's going to tear your tearaway stabilizer. So it'll frustrate you, make a whole mess. Don't even bother with it. This requires tearaway stabilizer so that you can get that foam and tear it without having to worry about your stabilizer failing on you. All right, that's it. So let's go ahead and get started with our project. Again, as I mentioned, this project is going to be for those that are experienced with using their embroidery machines, all right? Because I already have the embroidery design on here. You should already know all the basics of using your embroidery machine. So I'm not going to go into detail with that. It'll take too much time, but we are going to at least show the steps. And once we are stitching, I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to take it off the machine. Then I'll show you what the embroidery looks like and we'll go from there. So the first step we want to do is take our stabilizer and hoop only your stabilizer, only your cutaway stabilizer in the hoop. Okay. So we're going to press this down and make sure that that inner hoop is pressed all the way into the back of the embroidery hoop and get a nice tight fit for that stabilizer. And then we'll put this on the machine. The way the embroidery design is that I created for this onesie, it has a placement stitch built into the embroidery design. So the very first step in the embroidery design is a placement stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that out and then I'll show you what that looks like.
All right, so our star stitch, and unfortunately, I didn't hit record after I stitched it to show you how that looks, but there's the star, and it is a placement stitch to show you where to place your embroidery foam to cover all of the stitches. So I already have that laid in place to cover over the star, and to help you out, you can turn it over and barely see the outline of the star to make sure that the black square is covering everything. And to hold this in place, I did use a squirt of this 505 spray. It does not take a lot, just a quick squirt of it. You want to be careful, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure you don't gum up your machine. But now that we have this laid in place, I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching that. The next step is going to be the stitch that will tack down the embroidery foam, and it is going to also do another run around to help make sure that that star is punctured well so that it will tear, the extra foam can tear off around the outside. So while that is stitching, what I'm going to do is take the time to determine where I'm going to put the embroidery design. Okay, so this is for a baby. Let me grab my ruler, and I'm pretty much going to try and line up the design about right here, which is, you know, kind of where the top of the baby's chest will probably be. So I want the star to be up there, and then let's get it centered. So that's roughly about 7 inches for this particular onesie. I'm going to take this air marking pen and I'm going to mark the center, which is right here, and that's where the tip of that star is going to go. And then I'm going to come down here a little ways and try to get where that's going to line up the words for the bottom of this, and see if I can't get it straight, as straight as possible. And so for that, I'm actually going to use a chalk line instead of the marker line. I'm just going to come right across the bottom of this onesie, or right across the middle of the chest. So can you barely see that chalk line that I put there? That's what I'm hoping will help me line this up, okay? Even though technically it's not going to work quite the way I want it to now that I think about it, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so here's the star, and as you see, it's been punctured by the embroidery needle. So now what we want to do is, I like to take my fingernail and kind of like hold it to the inside of whatever it is that I'm trying to tear the outer foam away from, to help make sure that the inside doesn't lift with the outside, okay? So, and then I just tear. And if it's punctured well and you have a good embroidery foam, then it will, as you see, tear right away from your embroidery design or the stitches. Now, even if it doesn't, like right here, you see where it didn't tear away very well, you could come in with like some tweezers, or you could use some embroideries, little thin scissors. I kind of got a few fingernails, you know, kind of some sharp fingernails, and I'm just going to tear away it a little bit more. And there is our star. So now that we have our star, the next part of the embroidery design is some words that's going to go down here. So now I need to put the onesie on the hoop. Now this process of putting the onesie on this hoop is, we are going to do what's called floating. We are about to float the onesie on the hoop. And floating is basically what it means. If you're laying on the water, you're laying on top of the water, you're floating. Well, we're going to lay the onesie on top of this hoop. Now, to help hold it in place, to make sure it doesn't shift around while we're stitching, that's where this can come in handy. Or you can use pins, as long as you pin very far away in the corners. But this tends to work better, even though I don't really like it. And a quick spray, as you see, will work just fine. So I'm going to take this onesie apart, or unsnap it, and then we're going to slide this up into the onesie. Now remember, I marked where I want the tip of the star to be. So there's the tip of the star. See it right there? I'm going to line that up with the blue mark that I just put on this fabric. And because it's foam, you can kind of feel it through the shirt. All right, so there's the tip of the star. And as you see, it's a little bit off. Let me move it over just a little bit. And as you see, I'm putting the outline of the star. Now, down here, you remember I put the yellow line with the chalk. And I'm going to try and get this as straight as I possibly can, because I don't really have anything to go off of other than the chalk line and my blue mark to keep everything centered. So now here is the onesie. And when you do this, you kind of want to press down and get that onesie or your fabric to form around the star so that it'll hold in place. Now, what I might do, just to give myself a little bit more insurance, is I'm probably going to go ahead and add a couple of pins. Now, generally, I don't recommend pinning, because pins can cause a problem if they're not done properly. But you have to make sure that you're pinning all the way to the edge of that hoop so that it doesn't get stitched with the needle, or it doesn't catch the machine, and you need to pin from the top, not from the bottom. Okay, so I have that pin in there. I'm going to pin all the way up here at the very tippity top, and also feel up under there to make sure that you're not pinning the back of the onesie, because we're going to have to pull all of this up out of the way. So I'm going to pin all the way up here because I'm not going to be stitching all the way up here, so I know it's out of the way. All right, and then I'm probably going to pin on these sides because I know the only thing right in here I'm going to stitch is along the outer edge of the star, so I don't have to worry about the pins hitting that. So let me reach in here and get this pinned. And I apologize for the car horn. I don't know whose alarm is going off, but it is not mine. Okay, and then I'll pin on this side. Again, I would prefer pins over the spray adhesive, but you definitely have to be super careful when you're pinning, even when you're pinning, because pins can possibly get caught on the embroidery machine. All right, so when you're hooping a onesie, your thought was probably, or you may be thinking, how am I going to hoop this now? Because the bracket is on the inside of the shirt, and it is. So with onesies or things of that are like a tube embroidery, so to speak, you want to pull it all up, and you're going to have to bunch it up on top of the hoop. And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to embroider with it like that? Well, there's a couple of hacks. One hack I wish I could do. I don't have the capability to do it right now because I don't have any. But we're going to do another type of hack, hopefully. And let's see if I can't get these to work. These are kind of like, I don't know if you remember your slap bracelets. That's what these are. So let's see if we can't get this to hold on. I think these are too big, but I'm going to try and hold this out of the way. You also can use tape to hold your stuff out of the way. Sometimes painter's tape will help you. You can use clips. Like for instance, we have, I don't have a smaller one right here handy, but these clips from Dollar Tree sometimes can help. The problem with this is it is a tight space for the 4x4. So sometimes these clips can be too big. So just be careful with those. So I'm going to stick with these silicone bands because they'll hold that a little bit better. And then, so onesies are not hard to do, but they also definitely take work and patience and preparation in order to get it done. But as you see, we definitely can. Also, there's another hack where you can take a plastic bowl, cut it down, and it will hold the fabric out to the shape of the hoop. I have yet to make that. I've been meaning to, and I haven't. But if I can get around to making that, that's probably going to be my next step. Okay, so I need this area. So I'm going to be kind of helping hold this away as I'm stitching, because we're going to be stitching words up under this. And then after the words stitch, then it'll go back and it'll do the star. Now I need the words to stitch in black. And then once this is done, then we'll switch to the fabric that matches the onesie. So you also got to finagle all of this bulk back on the embroidery machine, and it can be a lot, but we're gonna get this done. Nope, don't want to do that. Much better. But less fabric. All right. Well, you know what? To make sure that those words are safe, I'm just going to hold it. Because I need to make sure that these words stitch like they're supposed to. Okay, so as you see, the star has arrived stitched out beautifully on this onesie. So now it went up to the top where the foam is underneath the onesie. So I don't want to stitch that in black. I want the embossed effect to be super superb. So I'm going to change the thread to the correct color. And in doing so, I don't want to take this off just yet because, as you saw, it was a little bit of a struggle to get it on there with all of that onesie bulk at the top. So we're just going to leave it in place. And then I'm going to thread it with the correct color. And now we're going to do the star and emboss the star. And that's it. Our embroidery is done. All right, so what I'm going to do is take this off. I'm super excited about this. At this point in the video, I added the second camera, which caused it to echo. So we'll have to just do a voiceover right here. But as you see, it turned out super cute. We're going to go ahead, take it out of the hoop, and we're going to trim away the stabilizer off of the back after taking out all of the pins, of course. And please be careful to make sure you don't get stuck if you do decide to pin. Turn it over so that you can see the shirt as you're trimming away to keep from cutting through the onesie. I've done that before, cut through a shirt, so you don't want to do that, but trim close to it. And then after we turn it inside out, I'm sorry, right side out, then you'll be able to trim your stitches away. Oh, right here, I was talking about the tender touch that you want to put on the back of a onesie for babies so that the stitches don't irritate their skin. I don't have any tender touch, so that I'll have to do after the fact. But right now, I'm trimming away the jump stitches. And now that the jump stitches are done, I'm using the shirt to wipe away the chalk line. And then after the chalk line, we're going to do a little spritz to get rid of that purple dot. And there we go. We have our embossed onesie. It's a little bit crooked, but for the first time doing embossing on a onesie, it's going to be okay. And he's not going to realize that is crooked, but it is a super cute turnout. So if you take the time to line it up properly, then you can emboss on your 4x4 machine. Now we're going to switch over to doing our longer embroidery design. You guys have the file in the description. Just click the link in order to get it. Meanwhile, to help us out when we're using the repositional hoop, I'm going to number the side of the repositional hoop and put the position 1, the position 2, and the position 3 on the hoop itself to help remind you of where the hoop needs to be in order to get those positions. So that's what we did right there. We put the numbers on the hoop with magic markers so that we don't have to worry about that anymore. So here on the computer, really quickly, I'm going to show you a quick overview of why we're doing the repositional and how it works. Now, if you want more detailed information on how to split up an embroidery design on your own for a repositional hoop, check out the link in the description below for that. That video is in more detail. I can't go into detail with this one. We're trying to get through the project really quickly. So let's dive into the theory behind why we're splitting up the embroidery design. So if you notice here on the embroidery design, it says, I am loved. And as I mentioned before, your embroidery machine can only work in 4x4 chunks at a time. So this design, if I click on position 1, which is what P1 is, it puts up a red square. This is a 4x4 section. And as you see, the E and the D and the heart does not fit in the 4x4 embroidery screen. So we have to break this up so that your embroidery machine can stitch it. So what we have to do is stitch one part first, another part second, and another part third. Now with this design, we actually can split it into two parts, but I've already did all of that hard work for you. I've split it into three parts so that you can get used to using a three position embroidery design, but this could have been split up into two parts. So the way this is, I'm going to show you how I split it up and how it's going to work so that you'll know what files you need to use. So in order to do this embossed design on the red t-shirt, we're going to have to use 6 embroidery files. Now, if I had done it in two parts, it would only be 4. I apologize, but we're going to do it in 6 with this one. So let's open up the first design. So the first one is your foam. So I am foam. If we do foam position 1, as you see, there's only 2 steps. There's LO, that's your placement stitch. And after the LO stitches, you'll see where to put your embroidery foam. And then you will put once you lay your embroidery foam down, then you'll stitch position 2, which will tack down your embroidery foam and cut it for you or pierce it so that you can tear it away. Then after you do I am foam position 1, then we are going to do I am foam position 2, which will do the V and the E. So there's the first stitch step will be the V and the E for your placement stitch. You'll lay your foam down to cover that. Then the next step that it will stitch will be to stitch down and pierce the foam for the V and the E so that you can tear the foam away. And again, we're going to then go to the embroidery machine and open up the I am foam position 3, and that's the D and the heart, 2 steps, same the position. I'm sorry, the step 1 is to stitch your placement stitch so that you'll see where to lay the foam to cover the placement stitches. And then once you stitch step 2 is going to tag down and pierce your foam so that you can tear away for the D and the heart. Okay, and that will give you your basic foundation, just like we did with the onesie, where it will have the word loved with the heart. It will be in foam. Your foam should be pierced and you'll tear away the extra foam that's left. So by the time this is done, all you'll see is LOVED and the heart in your foam only on your repositional hoop. All right. And we'll walk through all of those steps over there on the embroidery machine so that you can see it live and in person. So after you have all of your foam and your letters are sitting there, then we're going to put the hoop inside the shirt, line up your shirt. Then we're going to stitch the next 3 steps. So let's go back and I'm going to show you those on the embroidery Sew It Pro program. So let's open those. So the next one will be the I am loved file. So position 1, when we open that, as you see, it goes back to the L and the O. So your shirt will be laying over the top of the foam. And then once you have your shirt laid on top of the foam floating on the repositional hoop, then your first step is it's going to put the embossed lines around the L and the O. and then it's going to stitch the I am in whatever color it is that you chose to stitch that. That's your first position. Then your next position, let's open position 2 of I am loved, and it's going to be the V and the E, and it's just one step. It's just going to do the embossed stitching around the foam. And then, of course, your third position, because it's too wide for us to do this all in one step, we're going to open that one, and the position 3 is just the D and the heart, and that will complete your shirt. So let's see what this looks like over on the embroidery machine, but I wanted to walk through those steps first so that you could see it on screen, and then put it, once you see, now that you've seen it on screen, hopefully us actually walking through the steps, it'll all come together and make sense. Okay. All right. So let's go over to the cutting table. All right. Now it is time to put all of those 6 files into practice and emboss on our red t-shirt. Okay, here's my red thread. We're going to change this out to the black again, because the only time I need the red is with the final embossed stitch over the top of the foam letters. So let me grab the black thread, since that's easier for you guys to see. I'm going to thread the machine and get this ready to go. Easy peasy, mac and cheesy. All right, so here is my repositional hoop. And I'm going to do this the exact same way I did the 4x4 hoop. We're going to hoop the stabilizer. We're going to make sure that's in there good and tight. And make sure that you press the hoop pieces in all the way to the very back, so that you got a nice tight seal and your stabilizer doesn't have any gaps, and that way your hoop won't jump. Now, as I showed you earlier, this is position 1, this is position 2, and this is position 3. So on the screen, we had it like this, where it was LOVEED, right? So when we put the shirt on, you need to be sure that the neck of the shirt is up here so that your design doesn't stitch upside down. Okay. All right. So let us get this laid out. I'm going to slide this back for a minute, and I'm going to do this first. And I'm going to hopefully get this straight like we had it before. It looks pretty central. All right, and I'm going to use chalk again this time. Actually, the armpits. Let's go a little bit closer to the neck. Oh, let's make that more central. And all right, so I have my chalk marking to hopefully be sure that this time this design will be straight. All right, so now that I have my hoop, I'm going to click it into position 1, because that's what I'm going to do first, is position 1. So I'm clicking it into place, and position the number 1 is in the center of the two. The number 1 is in the center of this metal bracket. Let me show you another way to look at it. So here is this embroidery hoop, and it has 2 nodules, right? So position 1 is the first 2 nodules. You see how that 1 is in the center? That's written right there. It's in the middle of those 2 nodules. So this is the first position. Position 2 is right here, where the 2 is in the middle of the 2 brackets, just like this is the 4x4. And then position 3 is the last 2 right there. So that's how you can tell what your positions are. And as I mentioned, it's helpful to have it written on here. So now that I have that in place, let me get the design pulled up, and I'm going to actually change the camera so that I have another camera right over here that hopefully you can see as we're doing this process, and you'll be able to see it as well. So let's go here and let's add this to the screen. And now I'm going to stitch the first LO. Remember, it's going to do your placement stitch first in position 1. It's the LO foam design. So it's going to do LO, the placement stitch. We're going to lay the foam on top of it, and then we're going to let it do the tack down and tear. Okay. So we put it in position 1 here, and over here we loaded onto the embroidery machine the first I am foam position 1, P1. Okay. All right, and now what we need to do is put the foam over the top of that L and that O. Make sure the stitches are covered fully, and then we're going to stitch the next step, which is the tack down and piercing embroidery part. All right, now that we are done with position 1 of I am foam, we're going to take this off and we're going to peel away the foam. So let's switch this over. And again, I like to stick my finger nail right up against where I'm tearing it away to help keep the foam that I want to stay in place in place. And then we're going to tear away the rest of this. And because of the way this jump stitch is, I have to cut that in order to get that foam out. But there we have a nice clean tear right there. And let's get this center part out. You may have to use tweezers. Get some tweezers. All right, and there is the letter O. So we have our L and our O. So now we need to add the other foam letters. So that was position 1. So let me back out of that embroidery design on the embroidery machine. Pull up foam position 2 or foam P2. And then we'll bring that in. And so now that we brought up foam P2, we need to put the hoop on position 2, and it's the 2 middle parts there. And so let's put it on position 2. Move my machine up because it's bumping up against this in the back. All right, so now let's do our V and our E. So here is the V and the E. So now we want to take our foam and we want to cover the V and the E. And now we're going to stitch the tack down and pierce of the V and the E. All right, that is foam position 2. So now we're going to tear this away. And again, I did recommend having scissors on standby in case your foam does not tear as well as you would like for it to. The scissors do come in handy and you can just trim along the edge of the foam. And don't worry about extra strands and stuff like that because that's going to be hidden under the shirt. Okay, so there's the LOVE. Now we want to do the D and the heart. So now I'm going to pull up the last embroidery design for foam. So it's embroidery I am foam position 3. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. It's going to go with these last 2 nodules here in position 3. And it's going to do our placement stitch first. All right, and as you see, hopefully, see you can see the D and the heart has stitched. So we're going to use this foam, cover that up, and then we are going to stitch our tack down and pierce for the foam of the last 2 parts. All right, so now that this is stitched, so now we're going to tear away the D and the heart. And I'm back out of that because we're done with that design. And we're going to get this taken care of. All right, and there's a little bit left of this. There we go. Oh, and now the center of the letter D. Put that up. All right, I think that's going to work just dandy. Okay, so here's our foam, yas, and our heart. So now that that's done, now we need to get it inside of the shirt. And as I mentioned earlier, because this is a bigger shirt, this is going to be a lot easier than it was with the onesie. So we're going to do a quick spritz of the spray adhesive. And then here's the line on my shirt. You can barely see it there. I'm going to put this inside the shirt and make sure that it's right side up. And I'm going to line this line up with the top of the letters. So inside the shirt it goes. All right. And the first thing I want to do is establish the center, which this nodule on the hoop is the center of the design. Then I want to like I said, line the top of those letters up with that chalk line that I made so that hopefully the design will be straight this time. And the train is trugging along. All right, so see, here's the line. And see how it's just a little bit crooked? We don't want that in again. So I'm putting that line right up against those letters. And I'm going to look and peek and make sure this is kind of straight. Could move it over just a little bit. Right there is perfect. And because I sprayed the spray adhesive, we can kind of mold the shirt against the foam letters a little bit so that it'll help make sure that when it stitches, it will not stitch with wrinkles. That's the purpose of the spray foam, to keep the shirt from moving so that it'll not, like I said, put wrinkles on in your design. All right. And so I lined this up with the top of the letters because I'm going to put embroidery right here. I am is going to go up here. So I need that to be lined up with the top of those letters. All right. And so I don't have, I'm going to put a pin right over here since I know I'm not going to stitch past right here on this side, over here and over here. So that's just a little bit of insurance for me to make sure that this shirt stays laying in the position it needs to be and not move. So I'm putting my hand up under here to hold it up and make sure that I'm not stitching, to make sure that I'm not putting the pin through the back side of this shirt. Okay. That back layer rather. All right, so I think we'll be good. I think the glue for the rest of this should be okay. So as I mentioned earlier, because the onesie was so tight, we don't have to worry about that with the shirt. Look, we have all of this room right here. So I'm just going to make sure that all of the extra shirt is over here on this part of the machine. And we're going to put this on. Get this in there so that we can finish out this project. Now, again, remember we started position 1, then position 2, then position 3 to finish this out. So let's put it in position 1. And what position 1 is going to do is it is going to stitch the placements, the tack down stitch, which will go the outline of the foam. Then it's going to do the word I am. So let's pull that up. All right. And unfortunately, because of the way I have it programmed, I'm going to have to switch this to the red. Now, I could have done the entire thing in red, up until this point, but I wanted you guys to be able to completely see the stitches really well, so that's why I didn't do it in red. And then switch to black by the time we got to the words, but no worries. Fortunately, this embroidery machine has a quick needle threader. All right, so now it's going to go around the outline of the letter L. All right, now that the outline is there for the foam, it's going to do the words I am. So I need to change the thread to black for the last time, and then we'll switch it back to red to do the outline of the final 4 letters. Well, 3 letters and heart. All right, to keep from causing any issues, because I already see my tension is acting up, to make sure I don't mess up anything else, I'm going to leave this on the machine, and let's thread the red, and then we will pull up the last 2 embroidery files, well, one at a time. So that was the I am loved part, position 1. So now we're going to pull up I am loved position 2. So I gotta go to page 2. There it is. And this is simple. It's just one colored stitch. We got the red on there. So I almost forgot. We're still in position 1. So I do have to move it over to position 2. So don't forget, once you switch your design, you need to move the position of the actual hoop itself. All right, so I was just checking, making sure there were no parts of the back side of the shirt up under the hoop so it doesn't stitch through the shirt, the back side of the shirt, and then you can't get in the shirt. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, so that's the V and the E. So now we just need the last 2. All right, that was easy. So now let's pull up the final embroidery design. So it's I am love position 3, and it is this one, and you'll know it's the right one for the final thing because there's only one color stop. You don't have to do any more than just one color stop. And so now let's move it down to position 3, the last 2 dots, and now we'll stitch the last thing and we'll be done. Yay! Okay, we are done. Holler! All right, so that is the final part of the design. So now let's take our shirt off. I'm going to slide this back. I'm going to turn that off because we are done. Let's switch camera views. As a matter of fact, let's drop that camera view. And here is our embossed shirt. So let's take this pin out and we can take it out of the hoop now. And now that it is out of the hoop, we are going to trim around. And remember I said I was going to trim from the front? Let's do that. Because I felt like I got a little close to the shirt. Alrighty. So now that we've trimmed this away, we can come back to the front and let you see our shirt. And it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to trim, let's move that out of the way. I'm going to trim these jump stitches and clean it up, and then show it to you in the front camera. Alrighty, I put on the shirt, and as you can see, it says I am loved, and this is an extra large V-neck women's cut shirt. And as you see, the size of the loved is sufficient for, you know, an extra large shirt. It's not bad. And then you have our onesie that we did with the embossing as well, and you can see it. And it's super cool because the stitching, with the stitching being matching the color of the outfit, it looks like this is just, you know, sandwiched in the shirt, and it's actually super cute. Super cute hack technique. And this is a one hoop 4x4 embroidery design, and this one is a one hoop technically repositional design in a 4 by 6.7-inch hoop that you can get aftermarket to use on your 4x4 embroidery machine that allows you to embroider bigger. It does have some limitations, but if you check out the repositional hoop video that's in the link in the description below, then you'll learn all about the repositional hoops, the pros and the cons of it. Now, meanwhile, this was done on your 4x4 embroidery machine. Is this file I was able to create it in 3 different positions in PES file format for the Brother 4x4 embroidery machine. Those files are in the description once you fill out the form, and you will get the link to the Google Drive where the files are. These files and this file. And again, they're PES files because this is for the Brother 4x4 crowd. All right. So this is a treat for you guys so that you can do something super cool with your 4x4 embroidery machine. I will eventually redo both of these, well, redo this file and make it available for those who have the larger embroidery machines, and then they can just get the regular file. But it's a freebie for those with the 4x4 machines. How cool is that? So we appreciate you hanging out with us this evening. It was a lot of fun. And hopefully you guys learned that you can expand your boundaries with your 4x4 embroidery machine. So don't get discouraged just because you have 4x4. It doesn't mean that you're limited to just 4x4. There's a whole long list of things that you can do with that 4x4 machine. And this is another one of those options where you can use both of these designs and make you some money if you want to with your embroidery machine. So thanks for hanging out with us. I look forward to seeing you again in the next video. And until the next time we see you, we hope you have happy embroidering.